We begin by acknowledging that the land on which we record this podcast is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties. We acknowledge the enduring presence of First Nation, Métis, and Inuit people on this land, and that not all settlers were brought here by choice. We believe it is important to move forward in the spirit of reconciliation, compassion, and respect. I'm Kimberly Mackenzie.
And I'm Paul Nazareth. Welcome to The Intersection.
Today we are thrilled to welcome philanthropist and nature lover Dr. Isobel Ralston to the Hub. In 2017, after exiting their respective careers, Isobel and her partner, Dr. Jan Oudenes, created the MapleCross Fund. This fund was created to invest in and protect ecologically sensitive land in Canada. Their investments have truly had staggering results and have helped protect over 24,000 acres of nature in Canada to date. Today, Isobel and I talk about the MapleCross Fund's philanthropic strategy, how to approach and work with major donors, how they decide who to support, and we even touch on what she thinks about administration expenses. The conversation is warm, authentic, and candid, just like Isobel, so please join me in welcoming her to the Hub. Isobel, welcome to the Hub.
Thank you, Kimberly. It's great to see you again and to be invited on this interesting program. Thank you.
Well, you and I have done a little bit of work together. And as you know, in the charitable sector, we talk a lot about donors, but we don't talk with donors in platforms like this very often. So I'm very grateful that you're here today.
My pleasure.
So can you just tell me a little bit about your journey into philanthropy? How did you end up here?
Well, it's a pretty recent journey. In 2017, my partner, Jan Oudenes, sold his business. And as a result, Canada has been very good to us. Business has been very good to us. And as a result, we found ourselves in a situation where we had to do something with our good fortune. We don't have children, so that wasn't an issue about leaving any money to particular individuals. And so we decided to look into we thought, well, how are we going to invest our money to make it work for the general good? And that's when we started to look at various charities. And we found, quite frankly, that certain charities seem to be well-funded and have a lot of interest, but the environmental area we found to be very lacking. We've always enjoyed very much our hiking experiences when we lived in Western Canada, our canoeing experiences in Ontario. And we decided that to look towards somehow saving land for the future and to be able to invest in protecting nature in some way. And that's how we became involved in this particular sector.
Do you want to tell me about the owl story?
Oh, well, yes, of course. I guess I had mentioned that to you many years ago. Well, I was working, we lived beside a golf course, and they were taking down a fair number of trees and weren't included in the local municipal bylaw, and they were allowed to take as many down as they could. I kind of fought the fact that they were taking down these numbers of trees, but lost that battle. And one day the big crews came in the middle of January to start taking down hundreds of very large trees very close to our property. And the very first day that they started, for some reason, Sue Walmer, who is the Chief Executive Officer of the Oakers Marine Land Trust, came by because I had met her in this fight and became acquainted with her, and she came by. Just happened that day when they started to take down the trees. She says, I'll come by for coffee. And just as we went out and they started to take down the trees, we noticed this big barred owl sitting on a branch by itself. And we realized that it had been fleeing in the middle of the day, the saws who were probably interrupting its home. And so from that point on, Sue and I became quite acquainted with each other. I got to know more about her land trust. And that's really the first step towards donating to the land trust community. And it was through the Oakers Marine Land Trust that we made our first donation.
Started it all. It started it all. And now you're going to laugh at me when I tell you this. So today I was on the MapleCross Foundation's website, which is the private foundation that you and Jan have created. And I pulled out my calculator to add up all of the amount of acres for all of the properties that you have protected. And then I realized I didn't need to add it up because you have it right there at the top of the list. So you've protected 11,033 acres of naturalized area in Canada.
Well, we haven't done it alone. I mean, it's through our donations that amount of land is being protected, but it's not, you don't give a donation that necessarily covers for every property the total value of the property. But we help with those 11,000 acres. But I'm happy to report to you today, because our work doesn't finish. It's my job to always update the website, and I'm not very good at that always. But right now, as we speak, it is now up to 24,000.
Wow. Wow.
So we have a few other properties that we've helped to protect. But again, I'd like to say that, our donations aren't 100% for any one particular property. Part of what we like to do is leverage our activities so that quite often we'll suggest to a nature trust or a land conservancy that we would like to have a matching fund, for example. And so that quite often brings in a lot of additional revenue for a project. And we like to do that. The leveraging is actually very important to us. So we want to make sure that it's not just us who's involved in protecting a particular project, but we might like to try to involve the local community and even the federal government in providing funds to help out to help out the mission of moving land protection ahead.
I think it's really incredible how you are a catalyst for bringing other folks to the table to invest in environmental and specifically land protection initiatives. It really does help lift the tide for everybody, doesn't it?
We hope so. Some of what we do, it'll remain to be seen. But so far, we have found that there's been a good response. Recently, and of course, I think I've talked with you, Kimberly, before about the fact that we like to look as Canada as our backyard, not just our backyard in a little part of Ontario, but we look across the country. And with one property that we had helped invest in Saskatchewan, we were with a matching fund. It was kind of interesting to find out people's responses. And one woman I know, her husband's family has a farm in Saskatchewan. She says, my parents were going out, or my husband's parents were leaving and listening to the car radio and heard that there was an Ontario couple donating to this project. So they decided to make a donation. I don't know these people, but I think it was just great to hear that. That's
a wonderful example that you set. And I think it's worthy of note that neither you or Jan were born in Canada, right?
Well, that's true. Jan Oudenes, who's my life partner, has been for over 40 years. We met at the University of Alberta, where we were both studying, and he came out at that time in his early 20s to Canada, to Edmonton, to study. And he came from, did I say the Netherlands? I can't remember. Thank you. Short-term memory, but anyway. And then but of course, I was born in the UK when I was very, very young. And of course, I was born when I was young, but when I was very young, we came to Canada. I was 3 years old when we came to Ontario, and that's where I grew up in London, Ontario.
Well, I think that your philanthropy and your example really does demonstrate. I'm worried. I don't know if I'm going to say this properly, but the value of newcomers to Canada, and the contribution that you can make when you build a life here. And one of the things that I also think is incredible about your philanthropy is that national perspective. And you're really not in it for protecting all those trees near your home that we sadly lost, but you responded. Your response to that tragedy was to protect as much of our beautiful country and nature as you can. So,
well, I think that what you say about new colors to the country, I absolutely agree with you on that. And you know, everybody makes a contribution whatever way they can. I think that Jan, who came in his 20s and ended up, you know, getting educated here. I mean, this country has been very good to us too. You've got to remember that. Gave us help, give us our education, and from there, where we both got our PhDs in chemistry, Jan was able to build up not one but several businesses in the pharmaceutical area for active pharmaceutical ingredients. And in doing so, you know, the biggest pleasure I think that both of us had in our careers, I also worked in the pharmaceutical industry, but in a different area again. But what gave us both a great deal of pleasure was the fact that, you know, you would see companies grow and you would have all these employees and you would say, you know, you'd think about the employees and the families, you'd meet them at a party, you know, New Year's party or whatever, or the summer party. And you would just be so impressed at, you know, the weight of not only just carrying a business, but the people's whose livelihood depended on it. And so I'm very proud of the fact, especially that, well, Jan and I both, but especially Jan, did manage to create very good employment for a lot of individuals as well, and help keep the economy of Canada going. And of course, then we were very fortunate to move our next careers into the Land Conservancy. And so here we are.
Here we are. So we understand the mission of MapleCross to protect and restore Canada's natural environment by supporting land conservation organizations. But you've also been able to wade into the area of being a philanthropist in general and dealing with charities. And I'm curious about your thoughts around, as a businesswoman, an accomplished businesswoman, do you have any insights or thoughts around what it's like to work with charities or the charitable sector in general? How do you think we're doing?
Wow, that's a really
I know.
big question. Trust you, Kimberly, to come up with the question.
It, Isobel. You can handle it. We really want to know.
What was the question again?
What do you think about charities and how we operate?
Well, I would say that in general, you know, we've had an excellent relationship with the various charities. We've worked now with about 8 or 10 or so across Canada, and we're beginning to expand a little bit internationally as well for very specific reasons. But our main focus, of course, is Canada. And of course, we've given to a few other local charities and whatever. I would say that I think a lot of charities are able to, you know, get funding and are doing very well. I would say the Land Conservancy or the Land Trust or Nature Trust, however, they're, you know, they all have different names. It's a struggle for a lot of the smaller ones. And I think that in general, I feel that the impetus is they've all got very good intentions, and I think the movement is moving in the right way. But I think that we need both large and small land trusts, and we have them in Canada. We have the large ones and we have the smaller ones. I think there really is a place for both because there is a slightly different focus, and we need to have both. I would like to see, and I think recently we've seen, certainly with the federal government, with the NHCP program, and you know the impetus to have 25% of the land protected by 2025. our federal commitments there, and I hope and I think are going to be expanded. I think they've done quite well in helping the land trusts through the various funding programs. But I really think we need to have more. And I think we need to have more, especially for the smaller land trusts. There just isn't enough federal funding going around to help them. It's been very good until so far, and it's really helped. I'm not saying that, but I would really like to put out a call to have more funding for the more government funding, not just the federal, but all the provincial ones as well. And they're quite different. Some provinces are quite good at providing funds as well. But I think we really, as a society, have to recognize how important these nature is and why we should be doing this. And so I think that we could be doing more from a governmental standpoint. The charities themselves, I know, I see so many dedicated people who are working so hard, but until you get that funding, it's a tough go. It really is.
Mm-hmm. Here's another provocative question. I don't even actually know how you're going to answer it.
Uh-oh.
What do you think what are your thoughts about investing in the people and the administration and the infrastructure of organizations? What sort of framework does your foundation have in place for supporting the people who on the ground who make this work happen?
Well, certainly it depends on the organization, and I think that a number of the charities are certainly looking to have very sort of unrestricted funding coming their way. That's how they would like to handle things and have the unrestricted funding. And certainly some of the charities have had very good campaigns along those lines. MapleCross, which is our fund, we want the money that we're providing to support. We provide our funds to the land trust to buy a specific property. So we rely on ecologists. We have our own consultant, and we also rely on the expertise of the land trust to suggest whatever property that would be. But that being said, we also recognize how important stewardship is. So when we calculate how much we want to support a particular project, we calculate in not just the cost of buying that particular sensitive property that needs to be protected, but we also add a percentage towards the stewardship of that land. And so we are very happy to provide funding for the larger cost, which includes stewardship as well. And in certain cases, in certain situations, there have been cases where we have wanted to provide a particular fund for a particular individual to be hired to help out a particular land trust, and we look at that as well, but that's more rare. I mean, we look at more providing the fundings towards stewardship of a particular project, or indeed for any of the projects within that land trust.
Right.
Did I answer your question? Is that?
Yeah, the answer is it depends. I think it depends on the property, but also I know personally from our work together that it depends on the organization. So if they don't have the manpower to be able to deliver the matching funds, then you're willing to have that conversation. And I think we need to also, for those who don't work in the land trust movement, who may be listening to this, for people who work in the charitable sector, the idea of stewardship often comes down to taking care of donors or customer service. But what you're talking about is once an organization is able to purchase a large piece of land and turn it into a protected area, they are responsible in perpetuity for being able to take care of that land. And so you allocate a sort of an endowment to be able to do that for that property.
Yes, absolutely. And the land trusts have been very good at calculating the approximate amount, and it ranges. There's a slight difference amongst the land trusts, but there's a certain percentage that we should be paying. I mean, it's absolutely essential, because the land just doesn't take care of itself. It needs to be protected, and protected from invasive species taken out, preventing people from coming with ATVs and running through a particular property or whatever. In some cases, if there's a trail, there might be an opportunity there, but in most cases not. So again, it depends on the particular property.
So when I hear you talk about how passionate you are about the conservation movement and the work that you do, MapleCross is about so much more than just cutting a check. Can you tell us a little bit about how you work with your organizations?
Well, when we decided we started off locally, as you know, and we were looking at our own backyard, and then we decided, that we didn't like provincialism, and so we really wanted to look broadly across this beautiful country of ours. And I forget, what was the question again, Kimberly? Could you just repeat it, please?
You partner with organizations. You don't just send them money.
That's true. I mean, we absolutely, when we get involved with a particular group, we certainly put a lot of work into deciding what particular organization we want to work with. We actually talk to some of the land trusts about other land trusts, ones that we're working with. We sometimes say, can you recommend somebody in a certain area for us? And so we do our due diligence there. We also, as I mentioned, we talk to a number of we look at the ecologists, and we ask the particular land trusts what their particular priorities are and what they want to discuss. So quite often they'll come with a list of properties that they would like us to look at, and we'll show an interest in particular properties for a particular reason. So that's how we really begin to get started with the various land trusts. And so far, I must say that all of our partnerships across Canada have really been excellent.
You know what? It's because environmental organizations get less than 3% of the money donated to charity. I think it's just extraordinary to have somebody who has created this platform to really raise the bar in that area and let folks know that there's important work to do, and you really make it a priority to bring other folks to the table to accomplish this work, and that is something that is, I think, rare. I'd love to hear anybody listening who has other examples of philanthropists who take that responsibility so seriously, but it's a real gift to country and to nature.
Well, our slogan is investing in Canada, investing in nature. And the term investment means so much more to us than just philanthropy. And so I think that we expect dividends on that investment. Mm-hmm. And those dividends aren't things that are necessarily tangible, whatever, but we expect the land to be treated respectfully in perpetuity, whatever that means. But anyway, hopefully for at least a number of generations. And so investment for us is really the key word. So we don't feel that we're doing it for nothing. We want the return somehow, to not to us, of course, but for the nation and for the future. That's what we're looking for.
That's such a great point. Can you tell us about a time when nature took your breath away?
Well, I just see Jan is coming here with a cup of coffee for me.
Oh, isn't that nice? Hi, Jan. Nice to see you.
Yes. Anyway, a time when nature, well, it always takes my breath away.
But I'm just challenging you to think of a moment.
I think that I remember, think of a moment. I can think of so many examples around this beautiful planet that we have. Just those very, very interesting places. Africa with the animals. I think the first time I saw an elephant, I cried. I mean, it was in the wild, that kind of thing. But certainly within our own nation, I would say that having especially hiked in the Rocky Mountains when I was much younger, that was backpacking and just being very, very remote areas really was spectacular. I suppose the most recent example was when we were on the Firth River, which is the river in the Yukon, starts off in very close to Alaska and goes into the Beaufort Sea, into the Arctic Ocean. We were on that river for 2 weeks. I remember the first morning waking up and out of the tent, and there was a herd of musk oxen right there. And that was like, oh my goodness. And it was
I wonder if the charity planned that for you.
Oh, no, it wasn't a charity. That was just an adventure that we took. But I remember that wasn't a particular, that was with Parks Canada, though, that we went there to the Isobel Natural Park. But it was a funny thing was, I mean, that was the first day. And I thought, well, every day is we're going to have a herd of grizzly bears or something. And we didn't see anything. Well, we did. We saw one grizzly bear in the distance and a few caribou in the distance, but that was sort of the one event. Oh, and the other event on that trip was a one day in the morning waking up, there was a mother caribou floating down the rapids that we had camped beside with her baby, and it was taking one's breath away. You saw the mother catching her footing and the baby still continuing to go on, and then the baby got its footing and somehow got up too, but that was pretty scary, waiting for mother and child to be reunited.
It's nice to think back on moments like that when we're living the way we are right now. A very small portion of the sector works for environmental organizations, but everybody learns in a textbook about how to work with donors like you and Jan. What 3 pieces, and my relationship with you and my relationship with other donors hasn't fit into any textbooks. It's all like, there's just no, so there's book learning and then there's the reality of the relationship, right? So I'm curious about what you would tell a newer fundraiser who's just starting to work in this space with large amounts of money and affluent individuals. What do you think they need to know?
Oh, that every donor is different, I think. I've met some other donors who've made large donations in this area. I think, being a fundraiser also, I would think being like a good salesperson, the first thing is getting to know your customer and what makes them tick. So I think if you look at donations with larger donors or individuals that could bring you a large donation, I would think you should really try to find out what motivates them and not try to move them in a different direction. And for some of them, it'll be a large piece of property that they own and that's very important to them and close to their heart. And so it's a matter of finding that out and knowing how to work through that and be able to bring and help them understand the issues and why they should be making that particular donation and how well the property will be cared for, and help them understand what the benefits would be for that particular property. For people like us that have a more general thinking about how to donate, I would say that how to donate our funds to a particular project, I would say people should come prepared with the property, come prepared with a good value and understanding of the property, good numbers with regards to what it's going to cost to protect a particular piece of land, what the total costs are, what all the additional items that they have to, and really come prepared from a financial standpoint as to what the need is, and to also come prepared with regard to what the where the money will go and what the real plan is for the future as well. And also to bring examples from the organization where it plans to be. I think it's really important to have a good idea about the organization itself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And another thing too, that I think sometimes people come to large donors maybe on their own. I think it would be helpful at times when a particular organization, when the individual, the fundraiser comes, that they bring a board member, or they bring the CEO, or they bring one other person with them, because that lends a lot of credibility to an organization when you see that there's, not just one person who has the passion, but especially another board member who maybe isn't involved in all the daily activities, but when you can see their passion, see their understanding of the organization, that certainly adds a lot of credibility.
You're great in those meetings, by the way. Well, we visited some donors together, and
yes,
you're really great. You're so great at that. And you say you don't know how to fundraise, but you absolutely do.
Oh my goodness, I don't like to ask people for money, but I don't when they ask me.
That's not what it's about, though. You just said all the other stuff, right?
Oh, I know. I'm just
Oh boy. So you stepped out here and you shared all your secrets for MapleCross, and now there may be a whole bunch. You may have a flood of charities to go, need to go talk to MapleCross because she just did this podcast. So I want to give you an opportunity to address that. And what are your goals for MapleCross, and which calls would you welcome, and how might people get in touch with you if they want to? And who should not bother?
Well, I certainly, we're very clear in that we are investing in those land trusts and land conservancies whose mission it is to protect nature. We don't want to own land ourselves, but we want to support other people owning the land who have the know-how and will protect it. Mm-hmm. And we've been quite clear about that. And so I think that certainly any organization within Canada that is a charity and that has whose mission is to protect land and protect nature, we'd be very willing to have a chat with you. I think there are other organizations that have a wilderness protection aspect, might be due to maybe something with animals or something like that. We would certainly entertain discussion there as well. And we also provide funding to certain local groups that we believe that's important to do that as well. But I would say that the main impetus is to support those land trusts or land conservancies, nature trusts, whatever, to protect land. That's where the main impetus is.
And you define land. You define protecting land by securing it and having an environmental organization actually own it, because there are lots of ways to say that advocacy, for example, in theory, protects land as well. There are lots of different ways to protect land, but you're very narrow in the scope of what that means to you.
Yes, absolutely. We're talking about, we want to know the specific land that is being protected. So an advocacy group would have has a particular mandate, but it's not necessarily to protect a particular piece of land. Right. We like to see the money being focused in a certain direction, and it doesn't mean to say that it would never happen, but it would be rare that it would happen. There may be a certain situation that would make that possible, but
we're all a work in progress, right? And it's all important work to be made. But but to your point earlier about doing your research and finding out what the interests of the donors are is paramount to starting this conversation, right?
Yeah, and it's not always easy to find that out. But inviting them for a coffee or something is such a bad idea.
You don't mind that info MapleCross email on your website is something that that gets in front of you. So you are one of the more accessible philanthropists that I've met, and I really appreciate that about you.
Thank you.
Is there anything else you think that we should chat about, or that you were hoping to talk about today?
No, I think that's about it. Again, I think probably the emphasis on this great country that we've been endowed with, and just that we need to, in my opinion, cherish it and recognize that although we have been given a lot in Canada, we can easily lose it. And there are a lot of other wonderful nature places around the world that really are losing the battle. We still have a chance here, and it's really our responsibility to take that on.
Thank you. That's a nice ending for a hopeful future, and that there is progress, that we can win this. We can do this. Yeah. Well, Isobel, it's so nice to see you again.
Well, likewise, Kimberly. We have to have our real live lunch one of these days.
As soon as we can. Thank you so much for spending time with us today.
You're very welcome. My pleasure.
It was such a treat for me to reconnect with one of my favorite philanthropists. Thank you so much, Isobel, for joining us today. If you would like to learn more about the MapleCross Fund and the excellent work they have enabled, please visit maplecross.ca. And remember, please subscribe, review, and share this podcast so that we can keep learning, growing, and connecting together. See you next time.